Good evening, everyone. Welcome. So glad to be here tonight. I am Marissa Walster, the Vice President of Financial Services Solutions at the Financial Health Network. We are a national nonprofit on a mission to improve financial health for all. We do that by working with community leaders, financial institutions, employers, policymakers to change the systems that we all work and live and operate in. And I'm so honored to be here tonight with Mr. Raymond A. Jetson to talk about banking on dignity. Hello, Raymond.
Hello, my friend. It is great to see you and great to share with you. Thank you so much for being open to having this conversation with me.
Oh, same. I'm super excited about it. We have a lot to talk about. I thought maybe we'd start with a bit of a reality check, right? Um, we come into this conversation tonight in a state of the world where about one third of the population and households in the US are financially healthy. That means 70%, over 180 million people in the US, are struggling with their finances. That is uh, particularly acute in the Black community and with Black elders, right? We know that about 17% of Black adults over the age of 65 are living in poverty, compared to only about 7% for white elders. Um, I know that none of that's new to you, Raymond, right? Like those are not stats that are new to you. And you speak about many of those scenarios in your book. And I'd say that Aging While Black really reads like both a love letter to the Black community and Black elders, but also a challenge to the rest of us, to all of us, to change the systems around the community. And I know we're talking tonight about banking on dignity, so maybe we start there. I'd love to hear from you. Like, what does that mean to you as you think about the Black elder community?
Well, first of all, this description of a love letter and the challenge is it warms my heart because it is exactly that tension, Marissa, that I hoped to create in the work. First of all, to be absolutely candid about what I see as the systems and structures that compound over time and create uh, the characteristics that you described that don't just impact aging Black people, but being Black in America adds something extra to the equation. As I often say, aging in America is not a race neutral experience.
Yeah.
There are nuances that are associated with it. And so I wanted to mention those, but I also, it was important to me to highlight uh, just the excellence, the compassion, the ingenuity, the determination, uh, the mutual aid disposition of aging Black people that I've seen all of my life as I very rapidly become one. Uh, and in my office here, I have a picture of my great grandmother and great grandfather, and they were the most amazing people. Even though neither of them could read nor write, uh, they conducted business with a handshake and they bartered for so many things, but they had 12 kids. 60 something grandchildren, 34 great grandchildren, of which I am one, uh, 26 when they died, great great grandchildren, of which my great grandmother held her great great granddaughter. Uh, and both of them died uh, in their sleep in their homes, uh,
Yeah.
and 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 so and they are, as I write in the book, they are stories that are repeated all over this country,
Mhm.
but it doesn't make the narrative. And so I wanted to make certain to lift that up, but also to say that if we have this tension between these systems and structures that complicate and exacerbate life challenges for a group of people, uh, then what do we do?
Yeah.
And how do we do? And and I tried to spread the challenge around. It's not just people out there who need to do something. Aging Black people need to do something. Black families and communities need to do something also. And so and that's why at the end, and I'll stop here. That's why at the end of each chapter there is reimagine, act.
Yep.
Reflect, be thoughtful. Now, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. I mean, so the story is really permanent. I felt really were quite touching. And I think as you talk about your family, a big family, one that is living to the end in its own home is something that we don't see that much anymore. That's sort of really a fading lifestyle and family style. And a lot of that has to do with the financial systems that we find ourselves within and our ability to make ends meet as across the spectrum of age and race today. Um, but I think it's important to talk about as emotional as your book is, like finances and money is also a very emotional topic. Um, it carries with it for many people a sense of pride and fear and love and like responsibility. Um, but is also something that many of us were not taught how to talk about, how to engage with each other on. Um, and I would love to hear from you, like what was, if you think back to your youth and your childhood and being in that family, like what was the sentiment around money and banks? As you maybe sat at the kitchen table, like was that a topic that you all engaged in?
Well, so first of all, my parents were a part of the first generation in my family who actually conducted business with banks.
Mhm.
Uh, my great grandparents uh, and my grandparents. Uh, First of all, they did not have a lot of money, but that which they did have was cash and was stashed in their home.
Mhm.
Proverbially under the mattress, in the attic, because uh, I mean, first of all, there were no banks in the neighborhood I grew up in as a child. They did not have banking relationships. This was a segregated South, after all. And so it was a very, very different system. My mom, being a college graduate, a school teacher, uh, and some of my aunts and uncles started to change that so that we had relationships with banks. But that there was no financial literacy. That there was nobody to talk about investments and equity in property. One of the things that I get angry about uh, where there were these companies who had door to door salespeople and collectors selling insurance products
Mhm.
to people. Uh, and maybe 10 years or so ago now, I'm 69. I'll be 70 on my next birthday. So maybe 58, 59, uh, I found an insurance policy that my mother purchased when I was a child. I knew, I recall the insurance man coming by, to collect
Yeah.
the small pittance that, but Marissa, I cashed it in. It was valued at $1,500. And that's great. But when you think about uh, how many years my mom and my family paid for what was to be a burial policy,
Yeah.
and so people took advantage of the lack of real acumen and awareness.
Yeah.
around financial products and how to navigate this financial space.
Yeah. How does that translate into how Black elders today think about and engage with the financial system, right? Like, you talk a lot about in your book, the cultural memory that shapes the way we act and engage. How does that what does that mean for how Black elders engage today?
So I think, Marissa, we see a mixture of two worlds. We see a family that was somewhat that are like the one where I grew up in, where uh, uh, because of proximity to information and other things, uh, my father when he passed. Uh, had a will. Uh, my mom has a will. Uh, Many members of our family are very sensitive to the notion of succession planning and making certain that property stays within the family, and that we take care of that. But then there are other. One of the great challenges that I write about it a bit in the book. One of the things that I see as I travel across this country is that uh, Black families are not as actively participating in this great wealth transfer that's underway as they possibly could, because in so many instances, the greatest driver of wealth for Black families is in home ownership. And a lot of that home ownership is not being kept and being a source of a wealth driver across multiple generations, because they are not these plans and instruments in place to make certain that things happen. What I sense, particularly in my kind of swath of the baby boomer world, and even my mom, who's a part of the silent generation, is that there is this almost cry of uh, don't make the same mistakes that we did, and so take advantage of these financial instruments and relationships that are available to you.
Do you think there's still a lingering skepticism of the financial system? You talked about the sort of insurance salesperson that came up. Do you think that has maintained in the Black elders today, or has sort of bled down through the rest of the community at all?
Well, so generally speaking, yes, of course, we are like everybody else, not a monolith, and so there are some folks who have excellent relationship with financial services and are in places where they have access to. It is interesting uh, that in 2025, the neighborhood I grew up in, my mom still lives in our family home. The house that we moved into when I was 11, she still lives in that home. Uh, but things have come full circle. There are now no banking institutions, no real financial services that are in proximity to her.
Yeah.
And of course, as with every other part of the world, there is this strong shift toward digital as a point of access, um, which makes it challenging for Black elders. I have commented on Marissa, and I write about it. I share. I think I've shared in each one of these sessions that we've done that the first chapter of the book was actually written after the manuscript was done, but after the election and this flurry of executive orders, I just could not say something about that. And one of the things that I point out there is one of the executive orders that's not receiving a lot of attention is that after next month, after September of 2025, there'll be no more paper financial transactions from the federal government.
Mhm.
Well, if you are a 92-year-old woman, like my mom is, who lives in a neighborhood where there isn't a bank, and you, you don't have a banking relationship that's in proximity to you, uh, taking care of all of that business on a digital platform is not intuitive. It's not comfortable as a setting. And so I think uh, those financial institutions who go above and beyond and are in proximity and uh, approach financial literacy in a way that really connects with people are those that I think have stronger relationships with communities.
Yeah. I maybe we can double click on that a little bit. I'm curious in in your experience, your banking experience for yourself and or maybe for others as you've talked to them, like are there things that banks have done or could do that are really meaningful and useful um, as you think about trying to maintain and live your best life?
So I think one of the there are a couple of important things that have happened in the banking industry and financial services. Uh, One is, I think, making certain that there's diversity. I said that dreaded word. That there's diversity in the people who are in these institutions, and that there is an actual connection with the people that you seek to serve. Uh, and understanding, taking the time to understand, how do I contribute to, how do I build with this particular community at Emerge. And thank you again for the opportunity, and just a wonderful opportunity to be there, and the wonderful space that it was. I talked about this notion of build, not fix, and understanding that Black communities and Black people are not broken and need of fixing, but they're filled with assets that can be built upon, and understanding people and building relationship. And so I've dealt with uh, financial services personally,
Yeah.
and I have been very intentional about building relationship with people at institutions who appear to be interested in my business. And I think that is a disposition that's not just my own. I've also had to do banking as I've led a number of different nonprofits. I also had to deal with banking as when during my time as a leader of a congregation, uh, when uh, we were seeking a $1.5 million loan to build a new church. And we met with four institutions, Marissa, including one
Mhm.
that our congregation had done banking with for many years before I became the pastor of the congregation. We had $750,000 in cash in the bank, and our banker said that for a whole lot of reasons, the best the bank could do was $750,000.
Yeah.
Another bank, a Black owned bank from New Orleans, the leader of the bank came in and said, I understand Black churches, I understand what they mean to communities, and you guys are going to pay this off. We will make the loan happen. Here are the things that we need to do to make it happen. And so I think it's really important to have people who are part of your institutions who connect with, who understand this whole notion of understanding people's culture and their institutions and what they mean and how they act is absolutely critical. And so I think even as financial services with the rest of the world quickly moves to this more digital expression of itself, listening to the voices of Black elders, connecting with them in advisory roles, in paid roles to help make certain that the things that are being created actually work for people rather than hearing the complaints on the back end, I think is really important.
Yeah. And we hear that across the board. I think that's true of um, so many various communities, right? That to want to engage and to get the most out of I'll call it a financial relationship, feeling welcomed and heard uh, is really important, and feeling like you are walking into, sort of physically or digitally, a place that understands you and will sort of take you for who you are, and however much money you currently have in the bank, or however much you can bring to the table, is really important. And I think we see a challenge with trust.
Yeah,
And
and Marissa, I apologize for interrupting you, but I want to say yes, and what I am attempting to suggest, and what I hopefully communicate in the book is that many of the financial products that are brought to communities that I care most about seem to assume some things. They assume stable employment,
yeah,
steady savings, and easy access to credit,
yeah,
and these realities are not always present, and in some instances are structurally inhibited
yeah.
for people who look like me.
Mhm.
And there's a long history that validates that. And uh, what I attempt to communicate in the book uh, is that these systems, policy, employment, lending, product design, et cetera, have produced outcomes in the lived experience of people that standard financial offerings and products oftentimes just don't match the
Yeah,
lived realities of people. And the only way that you can begin to make certain that there is alignment between product and people is to engage people in the design of those products.
100%. Right. I think we see that manifest, that historic systemic challenges manifest themselves in the continued and perpetuation of the housing ownership gap, the wage gap, the retirement savings gap. Like, like the list can go on. Um,
Yeah,
and these these issues are, to your point, they're systemic, right? It is not just a how welcoming is someone in the branch to you walking in the door,
yeah,
and are they saying nice things to you, but are there true is there true design to help uh, really engage someone and bring someone, lift someone up, really. And sort of, as we talk about in the financial health network, it's focus on outcomes, right? Like, how do you build to focus on someone's outcomes, not just on where they are today,
yes.
and what you can get out of them as an institution. Um, I'm curious. I mean, right, like the systems go far beyond banking, right? Like there's obviously the financial system is one, but there's also employers, there's government, right, and policymakers. I'm curious if maybe we start with some positives. Like, are there things that you have seen, work, like some systemic, programs work, and lift people up and support outcomes, in any of those systems.
Beyond the financial.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so yes, and so let me be very general
Mhm.
at first. When it was allowable to say that we need to design products for the uneven life trajectories that people have experienced, that there were a number of interventions that actually created uh, opportunity for people, whether it was with some of the federal policy that allowed for uh, contractors on federal contracts to have in place opportunities for women and minority owned businesses to participate. The SBA and some of their efforts to make certain that people had in business had the technology and the back room infrastructure and understanding how to navigate the products or the opportunities in order to thrive. I think you see those kind of examples, creating opportunities for people to access higher education. Once again, recognizing that not everybody's path was the same, and that there are ways to make certain that you address the unevenness of people's life experiences without uh, giving somebody an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, Marissa, that we have entered this world uh, where even speaking those words is sacrilegious. Uh, and in anything, um, I was in a very serious conversation with someone who suggested to me that being aging while black could be seen as being discriminatory against people who were not black. And so I'm not certain how we adjust for the realities of people's experiences and how it brings them, particularly how they show up in old age in the current climate. It will certainly take a significant amount of skill, dexterity, and commitment on the part of industry and policymakers to be able to make certain that people have an equal opportunity and equal access to opportunity, not favoring anybody in one way or another.
Yeah.
Um, more to be concise, I think that conversation is a terribly complex one
It is.
in 2025 in America.
I mean, I might venture to say that that is the pressing challenge of our time, right?
Yes, it is. I agree with you. How do we make certain that we live in a world where people have an opportunity to live their best life and thrive?
Mhm.
Um, and this is not in any way should it be construed as a political comment, but I think that there's a mindset that is becoming increasingly prevalent that's not genuinely interested in everybody having an opportunity to live their best life and thrive.
Yeah. I'm not sure we're going to solve that in our hour together today.
No, we're not. We're,
We're
we we
not.
we are
Uh,
not.
no. Well, maybe let's come back to the financial system. Uh, and as you think about, some of the sort of greatest challenges that Black elders in particular, face today in terms of their finances, maybe we can pick a little bit on, where there's sort of great opportunity to be more supportive. And at Financial Health Network, we have a framework for how to think about financial health. We define it as someone's ability to spend, save, borrow, and plan in ways that make them resilient over time and pursue opportunities. And
Would
it
you say those four again?
will spend. And so that is really uh, being able to spend, like, have expenses that are under your income, be able to pay your bills on time. Right. There's savings, that's being able to have enough, what I'll call it, emergency savings to cover you in case of emergency. So really, how much are you able to have on hand? Borrow, so your ability to have a I'll call it a prime credit score, but a solid credit score that allows
Mhm.
you to get decently priced loans, and have a manageable amount of debt. There's sort of two sides of being able to borrow, like, being able to pay the debts that you have, and then planning. Like, how far in advance are you able to really think about and set yourself up to, not just for all the way to retirement, but even thinking about home ownership. Really, like, what are your long term goals, and are you planning for them?
Yeah.
Spend, save, borrow, and plan.
And I just think that those four words capture so much, and so, which is why I ask you to say them again, because as you will recall from our first or second phone call, when you said them to me, they just really captured my attention, because there's so much there that's captured in a very simple way. But I think that there are some opportunities for financial services. I talked about how so much of the products that are brought to market appear to assume this set of circumstances and realities that aren't reflective of the lived experience, especially of older Black people in this country. And so I think one is uh, beginning to design products for these uneven trajectories. And so, how do we offer accounts or credit or savings vehicles that anticipate the income volatility that so many people experience, the caregiving interruptions, especially for Black women,
Yeah.
uh, the late entry entrepreneur. Half of the small business owners, as I write in the book, are over the age of 50. And so, how do we make certain that there are products, financial products in place that anticipate this unevenness of people's lives? The other is this notion of some type of equity, or equity and access when it comes to retirement, uh, or the later stages in life. And so, how do we underwrite pathways for these non-traditional workers to accumulate some semblance of stability in their later years of work? I write about a couple of examples. One, a woman who worked as a domestic for just a whole bunch of years, caring for her children, somebody else's children, her home, and somebody else's home. Was amazingly industrious. Uh, got started having the traditional chronic uh, uh, diseases that impact so many people in America, but are especially prevalent amongst Black people. And the insurance that she had, the safety net insurance that she had, was totally not sufficient for the complexity of her illness. And now, if she was still in that situation, she might very well likely lose even that inadequate safety net insurance that she had. And so, how do we help folks like that? I write about a gentleman who was a worker with a company that had a contract, a long-term contract in the petrochemical industry, but he worked at such a level that he could not access a 401k. The gentleman The company ended up losing the contract. This gentleman got laid off. The Social Security benefits that he had were not sufficient for him and his wife to live on. So he ended up taking a part-time job as a custodian somewhere. And so, how do we help these folks who are in these non-traditional ways accumulate something that is akin to retirement, portable benefits, enhanced Social Security credits for caregiving years? What are these things? What are the policy and practice shifts that in some way or another acknowledge a lifetime of exclusion that people have experienced? I also think, and you will recall, Marissa, from Emerge, I really lean to this notion of culturally aligned partnerships.
Yeah.
And so, how do you connect directly with community organizations and the villages, the communities of support that who know the lived experiences, so that they might help to co-design pilots and measures for outcomes, not marketing or but how do we begin to look at what are demonstrable improvements in the stability of aging Black people?
Yeah.
So moving from kind of these product centric to more life course design and products. I think at Emerge, my final point was this notion of center people, not programs. And so I think those are some strategies that I think would make a difference.
Yeah. I we talk about that a lot. It's the need to really design and research based on lived experience, and a need, not a broad segment or concept of a need, right? Like, how do you really bring in those lived experiences and voices to a design process is really important. And I think you hit on something also really critical, that it is not just the individuals, but it's also the community organizations and the idea of, we also often call like place-based work. How are you going into the communities? How are you engaging with community leaders to really understand the community, to make sure that you are being and reaching people in ways that they are that speak to them and meet them where they are. Having those partnerships can be really critical to that.
They are critical, and this comment is not specific to financial services, but to so many entities. The relationship often feels extractive.
Right.
Uh, that there is just coming in and getting something that benefits the entity who entered the community. Uh, Rather than genuinely taking the time to get to know, to build relationships, and to demonstrate that you value the wisdom, the cultural knowledge that people bring to the table and the transaction. Yeah, I'll share with you when I did serve as pastor of the congregation, and we had our congregation. We had a couple of thousand people. Many of them, we were really active in the community. We had a diversity of people in our body, uh, and so people would want to come and connect with our folks. Uh, and I had the church then had a policy that if you wanted to engage with the congregation, whether that was putting something in the foyer and passing out information, or inviting people to something, that you could do that after your third visit.
Mm-hmm. I
And
love
so
that.
you literally had to come and sit through one of our services 3 times. And then after that, we would talk about how you might be able uh, to share your information or ascertain information from the people who are part of our congregation.
I love that. I wonder if you have seen any entity, doesn't have to be a financial services entity, but any entity um, doing that well today, like showing up in a way that um, really engages and doesn't feel extractive. Have you had any of those experiences of late?
So I'm not in that space
Yeah.
uh, uh, as much anymore. Uh, but I will share that I actually had a group of pharmaceutical execs have their representative reach out and ask if I would speak to them about their concerns with participation of aging Black people in clinical trials, and help them understand what they were not what they were not seeing. Uh, and I asked the person who was their representative was a friend of mine, and I asked the question, are you sure they want me to join them and talk to them? Because you know me, and I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'm not going to be blatantly disrespectful, but I'm going to be very candid. And so, and so I had this wonderful opportunity to spend time with 8 pharmaceutical executives in a virtual call, and uh, they were amazingly inquisitive. Um, but I had an opportunity to share with them that one, uh, asking the question of how can we increase participation is, in my opinion, the wrong question.
Yeah.
A better question would be, how can we increase the benefit of clinical trials for aging Black people? Because if we get that right, then you'll very likely not have a problem with people wanting to participate.
Okay.
But your question of increasing participation is fundamentally extractive,
Yeah.
because you want to get more information, and you've not taken the time to understand or to even attempt to articulate what is the benefit for the people who will participate in these trials. And and we talked about making certain that the relationships were not transactional. You can't just show up when you need people for your whatever it is that you're doing.
That's right.
How do you show up and begin to understand the relationships and to understand the culture of the people that you're seeking to engage?
Right. And I think that's something pretty fundamental in how companies operate that is a challenge, right? Operating from a how do how do we do better as a company versus as a company, how do we best support the outcomes of the people in the community or the people that we serve, right? It's a fundamental shift for organizations
Yes.
and how they approach their existence, I think, often. I see we've got a question in the chat, which I love. And it's about how can younger adults have conversations about retirement and planning with older parents? This is a great question
It
because
is.
we as individuals, as elders, like rarely live in a silo, right? We live in a pretty cross-generational, multi-generational world these days. Recently saw a statistic that 1 in 4 adults lives in a multi-generational household. And we have tens of millions of people in the US who are unpaid caregivers of children or elders. The sort of sandwich generation, right?
Yes.
I would love to get your thoughts on, what are ways in which sort of younger adults can support elders, and vice versa, right? And have these
So,
conversations.
so that I have, I think it is the chapter on finances, where uh, I write about this podcast that I listen to, where one of the young women there was really troubled because her family had an art gallery, and her mom said to her that she wanted the family's art gallery to be there 100 years from now. And the young lady was really bothered because she thought that what her mom was saying was that she wanted her kids and their kids and other people in the family to be dedicated to this art gallery. And it wasn't until she had a conversation with her mom. The operative word in this beautiful question is conversation,
Mhm.
because it was in the conversation that she learned why her family ended up in Las Vegas, why the family ended up in art and an art gallery,
Yeah.
how her mom had become this owner of all of these things that she thought she knew about her family. She didn't know, and it was in the context of this conversation. And so I think first and foremost, we have to become uh, comfortable in practicing conversations again and talking about things, and not just one way, but reciprocal conversations. And I write extensively in the book about platform strategies, other things that are ways for people to have these multi-generational conversations, which are critical. The other part of it, Marissa, is I think that we have to repurpose some of the instruments that we've become familiar with. And so one of the things that I propose is that advanced care planning is not just a conversation about what I want to happen after I die, but it is this way to capture key milestones in life. And so I actually start working on things not when I am, gray and old like Raymond Jetson, but rather much earlier. I am marking key milestones.
Mhm.
And so repurposing some of these tools and reframing questions. And so rather than, what do you want to happen with your stuff when you die? What is the legacy that you want to leave when you're not here? And how can we go about this process to make certain that legacy
Yeah.
uh, is present? The last thing that I will say, and it's really important, the last sentence in that question says, especially when it's a conversation they avoid. We avoid it because it's a conversation about mortality.
Mhm.
It's a conversation about death. But if we reframe it into a conversation about what is it about our family that I don't know? What do you wish that I understood about our family and its journey? And what is the legacy that you want to live? And as a younger member of your family, what is it that I should understand and how should I navigate it? And so it's really about reframing uh, this whole area of life that I think is important. And hopefully, it's one of those challenges that people will take me up on that's in the book.
I love that. Well, I'll put a plug in to say that if anyone else watching has a question, please put it in the chat because that was a great one.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe we stay a little bit longer on this, intergenerational um, situation that most people find themselves in. I'm wondering if you see or have a sense of whether or not, sort of, I'll call it financial help and advice, tends to flow kind of upward. Maybe that's sort of the wrong
Yeah.
metaphor, or downward, from or to elders today. And what would you like to see maybe be different?
I think the village mindset is critical. We view so much of life and aging, old age specifically, as an individual trek, an individual experience. I think it has to be reframed as a village experience. You know, I mentioned earlier, Marissa, uh, my great grandparents. Um, my great grandparents were able. My great grandparents both died in their home. Uh, Number one, because there weren't a whole lot of options beyond that were available to them in
Mhm.
that generation of South Louisiana. But secondly, their house was always multi-generational.
Right.
There were points at which, one or two of their children lived there, grandchildren, uh, cousins, and uh, children who came from families that weren't able to necessarily care for them well, who became our cousins, and we couldn't understand why they were our cousins, but they were our cousins. And so there was always this multi generational uh, household. The lessons early on flowed downward. My great grandparents were the source of wisdom and insight. And I promise you, the older I get, the wiser they become.
Mm.
Because some of those things that didn't appear to make sense to me then are just so astute as I have attempted to navigate life. But one of the things that I noted uh, was later in life, uh, they would ask questions, particularly of their grandchildren, about certain things, banks, for example, and uh, financing and finances and other things. Uh, I noticed in my own relationship with my mom, uh, that there are those moments where she will ask, "So, what is your advice on this? How do you think I should navigate this? I am thinking of this." And so I think that there is an openness to this information going reciprocally as we describe it. I just think that we need to build upon that. And, the first pillar of Aging While Black is recalibrate the village. And I write in the book the depth of this concept of village in African and Black life. Uh, I think those conversations are not just in families these days, but they need to happen in that sphere of lived experience around people. If it's a faith community, if it's a community center, if it's a civic or social organization, if they're a member of a fraternal organization, I believe that the realities that we see with aging, this huge shift that is happening, I think that all of these conversations have to happen in the village that the individual is a part of.
Yeah. I'll put in a bit of a plug that we released a brief on intergenerational financial health, and it gets a lot at what you're speaking to, the fact that um, we are individuals, and the financial system and financial tools and products are built really for individuals,
Yes,
not for multi-generational households, not for a village mindset and that sort of support. And I think we're in a period where we really need to start rethinking the financial tools and way that we operate to best support sort of all the generations that are more so coming together in
yes.
they used to. So I think and I hope that there's a lot more work that we'll start to see institutions and systems doing in that space.
Well, I look forward to reading the brief and sharing the brief broadly
Uh,
because it is an extremely important uh, part of life
yeah.
today.
Well, we're down to the last 2 minutes of our time together. It's flown by. I want to see if there's, maybe one last word that you want to leave us with on this topic of banking on dignity, and then turn it over to you because I know that you want to tell us more about, what's coming next.
So, what I want to say uh, again is thank you and the wonderful team at Financial Health Network because you have been open to partnership. You've been open to this shared experience. Here's what we know. Here's what we do. We believe it intersects with you and your community in this way. Let's see what happens. And I am in my 42nd year of public life. I have, I've been invited to speak a lot of places, uh, but the relationship with the FHN team and your interest in really understanding how we can build and support one another is, I think, a model for what's necessary in this season. And so I just really want to say thank you for being a friend. Thank you for the interest and being open and looking for ways to make certain that the important work that you do really makes a difference in as broad a swath of people in this country as possible. And so thank you and kudos to you and all of the wonderful team at FHN.
The pleasure has really all been ours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think those of you who are watching with us uh, now and who will watch this on YouTube, thank you for taking the time. This is an important conversation. Hopefully, you will share it with others. Our next conversation is around rebuilding the village for Black elders. And my dear friend, Janet Y. Spears, the CEO of the Meta Fund, will be the host and moderate the conversation on that evening. And so it is September 4th, same time. Hopefully you will share, hopefully you will join with us. And so thank you so much again. Thank you, Marissa, and the wonderful folks at FHN. Have a great evening. God bless you, and be well, my friend.